Hello, horror fans. Bored now, back with you here, and this is going to be my review of the 80s classic Nightmare Beach, and I can't even keep a straight face as I say it. Nightmare Beach from 1989. It's directed by Umberto Lenzini, so it's an Italian production, or is it? Is it directed by him is the question, because I actually had a look on the wiki page for this film. Yes, it has a wiki page, of course, everything does. And apparently he didn't direct the finished film because he felt the film was too similar to one of his previous films. So he backed out, and it was said that the screenwriter took over and he was the one who directed it. Although oddly, it also says that he wanted Lanzini on set as a supervisor to help things out. So apparently Lanzini, although he didn't actually direct the film, was on set the whole time. So I guess you could argue it's some of his vision, if that's the word. Some of his input was definitely in the film. But anyway, I find it ironic when you watch the film and the screenwriter, who apparently was the director, would feel the need to have Lanzini on the film. The fact that he thought, oh, okay, I might actually need help with this. When you see what the final film is, I think a kid could have probably directed it and got a better result. But anyway, we're into very cheesy, goofy 80s territory here, and there is some fun to be had. So the film opens with a guy being electrocuted, going to the electric chair, and the godlike figure of John Saxon is right there. He plays the arresting police officer, the guy who put this guy away, and the guy is shouting hysterically that he didn't do it. He looks over at Saxon's character, Detective Stryker, and Saxon gives him an evil sort of grin, which I think maybe implies then he's up to no good and this guy actually didn't commit the murder he's being gassed for. So he gets killed, and as he's being killed, he screams, I'll be back, that sort of thing. So this sets up a whole thing where we then go into the main setting, which is this beach, the beach of the title. By the way, it's Nightmare Beach / Welcome to Spring Break. That's another alternative title of the movie. And the version I watched has been dubbed into English. You can find it on YouTube. But yeah, we go into this beach scene and we get all these really shallow sort of jocks, and it's a whole thing in America, of course, spring break. So that's kind of the setting, and we get a lot of them like goofing about. You get guys playing these really cheesy pranks, pretending that they're dead. This particular character. And you get all the shallowness, so you get this really heavy rock and roll type music and all these like wet t-shirt type things, and the sort of shallowness you get at these sorts of things. But slowly, I mean, there's a plot where you get two guys. One of them's the lead of the film, Skip, and he essentially is this former athlete who really had a bad experience. He's getting over that, and so his guy, who's another jock but the more kind of shallow, obnoxious sort of jock, has dragged him along to spring break for him to forget about his worries. So you get the sense that then Skip is meant to be the more sensitive of the two, and he's really not interested in debauchery and all this sort of thing, whereas the other guy is trying to debauch to the max, if you like. So the plot is, and slowly these people start getting bumped off by this mysterious biker, and the guy who was sent to the chair, he was a biker himself. He was involved with this biker gang, and so there's this they have this sort of rich versus poor type story where the bikers are at odds with the rich kids who are at this resort. And so at one point the Saxon character comes along and says, you've got to clear off, to the bikers basically. So there's a whole class thing sort of going on. But the guy, who got sent to the gas chamber, he was a biker, so there's this whole link. And the biker gang, appropriately called the Demons, I guess, because it's a horror movie, they're insisting he didn't do it. And you've got his sister, his girlfriend, sorry, assisting he didn't do it. And along the way, because of the similarities, and because of what he said at the chair, I mean, it's very sketchy, but the Saxon character is starting to be convinced that this guy has actually come back from the dead, and now he's getting his revenge. And it's also notable that he goes around killing people by electrocuting them. That's pretty much his whole method throughout the film. So that maybe is symbolic of the fact that he was sent to the electric chair. And we get various tie-ins. So there's this character, Gail, who works at the bar, who again is one of the people you are supposed to like a bit more. She has a connection to the plot, and her and Skip slowly form a bond, and they start, looking for answers and all that. And at one point, it's certainly a red herring than the Saxton character. It could well be the killer himself, but that turns out not to be the case, which is flagged up. So Nightmare Beach, it's really trashy. It's really quite messy and all over the place. I mean, you get this awful use of music, this really generic sort of rock and roll type music, which is just crowbarred into the film. It sounds like it's been edited in a completely different place. It feels totally out of sync with it, and it's very dumbed down. It's very there's actually no real blood. I mean, you see a little bit when people are being electrocuted, but the kills are really tame. They look more cheesy, and it basically meanders along. It's super cheesy. It's really poorly directed, and there's some awful acting. The acting is really, really bad, and I'm not sure if it's intentionally bad or if it just happens to be bad. But the plot is really, it's like Dumbo turned up to 11, or Dumb turned up to 11. But in its favour, there are some fantastic lines of dialogue. So you get this whole religious thing where one of the characters in the film has a religious dad who's a priest, and he's always judging the kids and their activities. So at one point he sees like the kids in the car and they're on their way to spring break, and he says, he describes them as lost lambs, which is hilarious. And I think it's him or someone else he knows, but actually has the line of the film, which is in the trailer, which is actually "Welcome to Spring Break," the annual what does he say? Oh, migration of the idiot. Welcome to Spring Break, the annual migration of the idiot. Brilliant line. Delivered so deadpan. It's just fantastic stuff. And it's a pretty nuts film. So the kills, as I said, are pretty rubbish, but they're sort of cheesy and entertaining in their own way. So we see the biker in the first kill when he's pursuing this girl. And he literally electrocutes her. He electrocutes. So he picks her up because she's looking for the ride, and he starts going too fast, so she wants off the bike, and that's when he electrocutes her. Somehow, it doesn't show you how, but somehow he electrocutes her in her helmet, and that's kind of how she dies, and she flops to the floor. It's all really, really silly stuff. And later on, there's one in an elevator and I'll mention this character in a minute, but she's killed in an elevator, and he literally reaches through the top of the elevator and electrocutes her. And that one is probably the worst of the lot. That looks really, really sloppy. But there are some fun little jokes in the film, because there's this blonde girl who asks like this rich older guy for a quarter, and he gives it to her, but then he uses it as a sort of a come on, and he asks where she's going to school, and asks about her, and she talks about she's studying to be a doctor, and that she wants, but she's struggling to get the money. And I love this really patronising message. She says, I want to help all these poor people. And then it sort of turns it around on you, because the older guy, as I said, is using it to pick her, and she said, "Oh, okay, why don't we go and work that one out?" And in the next scene, he's basically slept with her and given her the money, so for her tuition. But it's this funny thing where later you find out she's a prostitute, or well, maybe not a prostitute, but well, sort of, but then she's basically sleeping with all these rich older guys for money. So it's actually her playing them rather than the other way around. So you see her doing it with a cowboy, this guy in a cowboy hat. So that's a nice little gag, the fact that she's actually playing them, and it becomes a running theme in the film. But it's that character, the blonde girl, who gets killed in the elevator, and it's pretty hilarious because basically they've set up this guy who's like like the guy at the desk of the resort, and he's one of these stereotypical characters you get in like 80s like horror movies, particularly, where he's this guy who's a bit nerdy, a bit sort of an oddball, who just get picked on by the rich characters. But at the same time, he happens to be a bit of a perv, because he's looking at girls through a peephole he has in like the sort of cupboard. So in a hilarious twist, he gets killed in the cupboard by the killer, the mystery man, the motorcyclist. And he happens to be I don't know how he manages this, but he stands up dead in front of the peephole. So when the girl comes in, she's like, "Oh, you pervert, you pervert!" And she obviously then she realizes he's dead, and he flops down, and she screams, and then it leads to her being killed in the elevator. But yeah, little touches like that are really funny. And there's this other sort of running gag where you get one of the jerky guys, they're just like playing tricks on just on people. So there's a great one where actually he's pretending to be a shark. He's got like a shark sort of like costume on, and he's in the surf, and so a police officer actually comes up with a gun and almost shoots him. And so that's kind of a running gag where he's just playing like he's playing dead, and in that case he's playing a shark, and he ends up being dead. And of course the irony is that they don't believe he's dead till they realise, but at first they don't buy it because he's been playing all these gags. But yeah, the film has this strange conflicting message, because on the one hand it's kind of saying how like the Saxon character has put away this biker, and he's done it almost for statistics and almost because he's a bit of a snob, and it plays up this rich angle. It almost plays up bikers versus these rich kids. And so for a long time they start thinking, is the guy really still alive, or is it one of the bikers? And they actually they don't kill, sorry, but they beat up like Skip's friend, and that puts them in the frame sort of thing. But it turns out they left him just beaten up, and he ends up being killed. But as I said, there's this weird sort of message where, on the one hand, they're sort of painting the bikers sympathetically, and they're sort of frowned upon, and these snobby sort of rich white people, but then on the other end you see the bikers acting really horrible as well. So it's hard to root for them. I mean, I think at times the film is so cheesy and so bad and just so it looks so amateurish, then it does make you laugh and there is some fun to be had. So there's this scene quite late on when the bikers burst into the police station and they apprehend it because they're looking for Stryker basically, and they choke like the guy on the desk with a chain, but it looks like the most unconvincing chokehold you've ever seen, and it's with a chain, but it just looks like literally he's just put it around his neck and the guy's trying to act like he's being like choked or hold. It looks so bad, and they look like the least threatening bike gang. I mean, you would not be intimidated by these guys if they walked up to you in the street. You just wouldn't. So it's all 80s schlock. I mean, it's very low grade, very amateurish, it's hard to really give a shit about anyone, but there are some really fun lines. I love the line, he was electrocuted the other day when Skip is asking Gail about, because it turns out her brother was the one killed by the biker, or supposedly killed by him. How convenient, and all this is linked. But anyway, yeah, she uses the line, he was electrocuted the other day, just casually, just like it's a common sort of thing. And it's just an odd term to use. Surely you would say, oh, well, they arrested him and he was given the chair, or he was given the death sentence. Not, oh, he was electrocuted the other day. So yeah, it does drag at times, and it's not quite a full-blown guilty pleasure, but there are some insane scenes. The kills are so silly, they're actually funny. There's some entertaining bad acting, and Saxon does make it worthwhile. He is a badass. He is impressive and entertaining. Those stern eyes. I think he really understands the level of the film he really plays, and he's just a cool guy. He's a cool 80s actor. You love seeing him in these films. He's so reliable. So automatically it gets a mark for John Saxon. And I thought at first he was a bit miscast just because why have him play this nasty son of a bitch? But he makes you believe in him, and he's actually really entertaining. And the reveal at the end, the overall twist, I mean, Saxon's a red herring. I think it telegraphs it's not going to be him, but it turns out to be the nutty religious guy, and he's doing it just to get revenge, just because all these kids are being shallow and they're being sinful, and that's that's sort of the twist, which is so dumb, but it's kind of hilarious because his acting is so OTT when he's trying to kill Gail, and then eventually he gets electrocuted, but it's just this ridiculous scene that looks so unrealistic. But there you have it. It's quite nuts and bolts. There are some insane moments to enjoy. John Saxon brings the movie up, and it's worth watching as a cheesy guilty pleasure, but yeah, it's kind of dull. It's not really very good. So I will give Nightmare Beach a 3 out of 10. As I said, the Saxon factor and some of the great funny lines bring it up a little bit, but 3 out of 10 for me, and you can enjoy the carnage on YouTube. And I'll be back with another horror movie review soon. Thanks for watching, and goodbye.